In this presentation, we will give a brief overview of the fair trade movement, how it began, the positive and negative implications of this global model, and how it ties together both consumerism and environmental policy and awareness. This interdisciplinary approach allows fair trade to be assessed as a sustainable market over time. Since the beginning of human history, there have always been examples of dichotomous dominant and exploited groups, where certain communities and civilizations had some incentive to control or manipulate other cultures as well as their natural resources. This abuse of power and control can still be found in most societies throughout the world today. In more recent times, with the help of colonization, we have categorized our world into developed and developing nations, or those that are rich or poor monetarily. Through this, we have created a form of cultural imperialism, where developed countries maintain an unequal relationship in order to gain something the developing nations have, which are often natural resources. Even in today's society, the problems of extreme wealth and poverty still exist. For example, the average American home is more luxurious than what most developing countries have in terms of shelter, but most Americans continue to want more. This fuels consumerism in developed nations, where people feel entitled to a comfortable lifestyle. In response to the global inequality of wealth and resources, the idea of fair trade was established. In theory, fair trade is a concept where producers are given the opportunity to create a sustainable way of life while being treated fairly and taking care of the environment. Consumers have the opportunity to purchase a high-quality product that supports a small-scale cooperative using just and fair means. The fair trade movement officially got its start by a woman named Edna Ruth Byler in 1948. She fairly purchased crafts in Puerto Rico and imported them back into the U.S. Eventually, this gave rise to 10,000 Villages, a store and organization that supported the livelihoods of poor locals. Since then, over 400 fair trade organizations exist involving over 70 developing countries worldwide. The fair trade label comes with strict standards and expectations of its producers, which in return increase the profits and livelihoods of these people. Such standards include fair prices paid to workers, transparency in production, empowerment to employees including women and minorities, as well as education and maintaining a sustainable production practice. Natural resources also benefit from true fair trade practices. Agriculture on small-scale farms better conserves the surrounding environment, promotes healthy soil content, and produces jobs for the local community more so than large industrialized production facilities. This in turn allows local flora and fauna to persist in concordance with fair trade farms and businesses. Within the last 5 years, the fair trade movement has evolved to incorporate even the harshest of working conditions into something more tolerable and sustainable. In 2011, Fair Trade International and the Alliance for Responsible Mining committed to a groundbreaking effort in establishing a market for gold miners in their communities. Thus, it appears that fair trade has the potential to expand the range of goods being sold in the future. The increasingly important issue of climate change is closely connected to developed and developing countries, where those that have a high amount of consumerism tend to also have the highest carbon emissions. Developing countries that are not necessarily tied to high volumes of consumerism are being affected the most as far as temperature and precipitation shifts. Thus, climate change is affecting many countries producing goods for the fair trade movement. By having higher wages and earning more profit, disadvantaged communities can prevent local disasters through building and purchasing better infrastructure that can withstand increased storms, as well as utilizing smarter agricultural practices that allow less runoff and landscape damage. Though fair trade appears to be a positive form of production and consumerism, there are still many holes in the model that are being assessed. Many producers are subjected to a hard way of life without great health benefits in the long run. Some workers have even reported that they do not understand the fair trade mechanism and have a lack of trust for those in charge. This lack of communication creates unhappiness. Another issue involving fair trade is that of ethics and the treatment of workers. The term cultural imperialism is where rich, developed countries dictate the market in developing countries. This can ultimately lead to less freedom of choice for producers and their families, whom feel forced to supply goods of certain kinds in quantities higher than normal to fit the demands of the consumer. The certification criteria to become a fair trade business is also problematic for many organizations and often frightens producers from becoming involved. Once certification occurs, local groups may also undergo additional taxation that can ultimately lead to their demise. Unfortunately, farmers and craftsmen may not be equipped with the education necessary to join the fair trade market. One of the most recent debates that could discourage producers to join the market is the issue of border carbon adjustments. Countries are becoming aware of how greenhouse gases need to be reduced by vast amounts in order to alter the impacts of climate change. However, taxing local small-scale producers for shipping their goods could drastically change the participation of organizations involved in fair trade. After analyzing the pros and cons of fair trade, is it an effective and sustainable model for the world to participate in? Is it actually changing the lives of those in developing nations? Are consumers interested and willing to purchase goods at a higher price, knowing these items assist others in obtaining a better life? Do fair trade labels make a difference? Research shows that fair trade is a model that needs improvement, but that it is also an effective way of bridging the gap between developed and developing nations. In 2002, it was estimated that the fair trade network was worth over $500 million, which since then has increased. Consumers are paying more attention to certified products and often feel pride knowing that they are making an impact. It is frightening to think where the world is currently headed in terms of production and the use of natural resources. As the human population continues to grow at an alarming exponential rate, crowded factories and large industrialized farms will continue to deprive the earth in an irreversible fashion. Plants and animals will be displaced as humans recklessly dominate over the land. The fair trade movement is making a push not only to ensure that people are treated justly, but that the environment is left intact through educated, sustainable farming. Though the model is not flawless, fair trade is a step in the right direction where communication and connectedness can create a better way of life for both producer and consumer alike. Every day we are faced with choices on what to purchase. Every dollar that is spent matters and can be considered a conscious stance to support something we believe in. The power we possess as consumers can make a huge impact on the lives of others across the world in a positive or negative way. How will you be the change you wish to see in the world?